Brian Jordan, and you're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
So I got a call that said, this is Susan Bailey. And I said, yeah, but I'm sorry, I don't know a Susan Bailey. She goes, I'm Henry Aaron's secretary. And I went, yeah. She goes, Henry would like to talk to you. I said, yeah, okay. And he said, how would you like to fly down to Sarasota and look at our pictures? And I said, I would love to. He said, well, when can you do it? Jokingly, I said, tomorrow. He goes, okay, we'll take care of that. I'll meet you at the airport in Atlanta. Susan will have the arrangements. And then I get on a plane with Hank Aaron and fly down to Sarasota. He offers me a job, and I said, well, what team do you want me to manage? He goes, no, he wants you to be a pitching coach.
Hi, this is Phil Necro. You're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
Most guys throw it this way. The ball back in here, hands come around, and these two fingers come into the ball. And stiff wristed, no follow throw, and just a little up and goes in the bat and hope there's no rotation on. The ball comes in there and doesn't bother. It doesn't never do the same thing twice.
This is Kyle Wright, and you're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
This is a great story. He was the minor league director when I was drafted in 1976. I was playing semi-pro baseball out in Eureka, California. My dad was at my house. Hank Aaron was the minor league director. I get drafted in the 5th round of 1976. Hank Aaron calls my house. My dad answers the phone. And he says, Mr. Benedict? He said, yeah. He goes, this is Hank Aaron, Atlanta Braves. He says, yeah, right. Hangs up. Hank Aaron, it's a true story. Hank calls back, says the same thing. Mr. Benedict, your son Bruce Benedict, yeah, right. Hangs up. Hangs up on Hank Aaron. Finally, the 3rd time, he said, Dave, we drafted your son in the 5th round. Please don't hang up, whatever. So I said to my dad's dying dad, I said, Dad, you're the only human being in the history of the world in communication that's hung up on Hank Aaron twice on a phone call. But that happened. My dad was in Omaha, Nebraska. After that, my dad called me. I was in Eureka, California, playing for the Humboldt State Crabs, and then flew to Atlanta and worked out, and then signed.
I might say about Hank, I was in the major leagues when he took over the minor leagues, so I didn't really have like direct contact with him, but he came down and talked to me, about hitting every once in a while, but he never came down unless he was invited. I'm sure he was up there a lot of times in his office, Fulton County Stadium, going, what is Murph doing? But he always respected our hitting coaches, and when he came down there and talked to me about hitting, I'd be like in the back of my mind, yeah, you're Hank Aaron, man. It's like when I met Ted Williams at the Hall of Fame game one year, guys. Remember we used to do that? He watched all the games on TBS. And he goes, Dave Murphy, yeah, good to meet you. This is Ted Williams. You got to get a better pitch to hit. I'm like, you're Ted Williams, man. That's easy for you to say. You struck out 20 times a year. Anyway.
You mentioned maybe Snit. We could shed some light on this a little bit because he called all the time. We lost Phil Necro in the last year. And ladies and gentlemen, maybe the finest Hall of Famer, maybe of all time that you would ever come across, and a nice person.
And it was pretty amazing to have Hank and Nuxie. Some really great individuals. Let me just ask Benny this. What did Nuxie say about you in the Hall of Fame?
Every place I ever went with Phil, And we did some charity stuff every year. The first thing he said, he goes, "I'm not in the Hall of Fame without him." Which is
Hello, baseball fans. You're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
Welcome into On Deck. I'm Tyler Redmond. As always, thank you so much for checking out the channel. I do appreciate it. While you're here, do me a favor, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay up to date with everything going on with the Atlanta Braves through spring training and, of course, the regular season on into the postseason. Today we are, of course, talking about spring training. It's been a couple of weeks since we last saw each other. I actually was at spring training last week, so I was unavailable to do a live stream and talk to you guys about the most recent things last week. So we're going to update you there and tell you everything that happened from week 1 to week 3. Go through the roster, tell you the biggest changes, that kind of thing. But before we do that, I wanted to just go through my experience at spring training. Of course, I, again, was there last week. I saw them take on, of course, the Boston Red Sox and the Dominican Republic. Now, the interesting thing about those two games when it comes to the Braves is this. Number one, both Dylan Dodd and Jared Schuster pitched those 2 days, so I got to see both of those guys in action. Those are two guys that are now in the starting pitching conversation. More on that in just a second. But it was also my first time in any Major League Baseball event as media personnel, so that was a really good experience for me. On a personal note, that was really fun for me. But aside from that, let's talk about the Atlanta Braves. Let's talk about mainly the biggest changes, and we're going to start that with the starting rotation. So this is last week. This is what, or last time we were here, week 1. This is what we knew we were getting into spring training. This is what the general consensus was with the starting rotation. You had your top 4. These were the guys that were pretty much solidified in the starting rotation, no questions asked. Max Fried, Kyle Wright, Spencer Strider, Charlie Morton. When you had about 4 guys that were in the conversation of possibly being the 5th or 6th starter, those guys include Michael Soroka, Kobe Allard, Ian Anderson, and Bryce Elder. But things have changed. You now have lost Kobe Allard due to injury, and both Ian Anderson and Bryce Elder have been officially optioned to go to AAA Gwinnett. Now, that does not mean that they cannot contribute later on in the year. They certainly can, but at least for opening day, it looks like Ian Anderson and Bryce Elder will be spending that day in AAA. And, of course, the arrival of Dylan Dodd and Jared Schuster. Now, at the beginning of spring training, there were probably very few people that would have told you that they thought Dylan Dodd and Jared Schuster would be within that conversation. But both of these guys are in there. And, again, I mentioned that I got to see both of these guys pitch, and that's true. But I also got to interview both of these guys alongside other Braves media. I wanted to give you a chance to kind of be introduced to both of these guys. Again, Dylan Dodd and Jared Schuster. So what I'm going to do is basically play you those interviews, let you kind of get a feel for who these guys are. There's not a ton of video out there of them, so I figured I would be willing to show you kind of who they are, what their mindset is, and here we go. Here's Dylan Dodd. First off, this is right after he faced off against the Dominican Republic World Classic team. Now, keep in mind, he did lose that game. He gave up a home run to Robinson Cano, but all in all, I mean, that team is pretty much an all-star team. So here's Dylan Dodd moments after his game against the Dominican Republic.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they have some of the best talent out here in the world, obviously, and just going out there and getting this opportunity to face them, I thought was really cool for me. I thought I kind of fell behind hitters there in that 3rd inning, and they're really good and they made me pay. Yeah, it's crazy going from junior college to mid-major Division I to now playing the Dominican Republic World Classic team. I mean, it's pretty surreal. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to take it in the moment, but I'm sure I'm going to sit down and take it in and evaluate my performance and take something good away from it.
Again, that was Dylan Dodd. Also, again, moments after losing to the Dominican Republic. But hey, what a mindset to have. Moments after that interview, it was pretty funny. Mark Bowman, of all people, asked him, hey, how'd you feel? How'd you feel? Because he went through 2 innings scoreless against, frankly, a very solid roster. You're talking about a lineup that included Manny Machado, Ketel Marte, Gene Segura. These are not scrubs. They're guys that perform in the major league level right now. They're guys that are either all-stars or future all-stars. It was a very potent lineup. So, he basically said in response to that, I was feeling pretty good about myself until the 3rd inning. I got humbled. And, that's obviously a growing pain. But I'll also tell you this. It's not fair to judge him based off that performance. Dylan Dodd has had a great spring. And he's been a standout. A lot of people are picking him to be a standout in the regular season. Not only spring training. They're picking, I believe the Athletics selected him as the possible Rookie of the Year candidate for the Braves. Not possible Rookie of the Year, but the Braves representative in that award. But the other guy on the flip side of that is Jared Schuster. Now, Jared Schuster is a guy who most Braves fans of any recent time would be familiar with as their first overall draft pick a couple of years ago. And look, he's all of what he's advertised. He's been great throughout the spring. He's been great throughout the minors. No reason to think he couldn't be great in the majors other than time put in. That's the only real concern there. So here's Jared Schuster after his performance against the Boston Red Sox.
How does it feel like this has happened fast to where you could start the year in the rotation or be a week or month away or whatever?
I wouldn't say fast, just enjoying it all. It's all a process, so a lot of hard work and a lot of good teachers and teammates have helped me get to where I'm at. Definitely grown. Definitely slider's gotten a lot better, and just being able to trust myself a little more. And I think the Cape was a great experience just to build confidence. And since then, I've definitely been able to grow and get better each year.
So again, that is Jared Schuster right after facing off against the Boston Red Sox. So that is where the starting rotation seems to be right now. Again, a couple of guys have been named out of the mix for that 5th starter spot. Michael Soroka is not necessarily a leading candidate there, but he is certainly a candidate. But the list has gotten shorter. Dylan Dodd, Jared Schuster have kind of taken that favorite spot. Michael Soroka still in the possibilities of could perform, but I want you guys to be aware that this is not the entirety of the starting pitching. I actually think the Braves have a very good problem right now. And what I mean by that is, if you remember last year, the Braves did not just have 5 starters. That's not exactly how it worked. They had their 5 starters, and they also had a few guys in the minors that could come up and pitch. A lot of you guys, that's the reason you want Bryce Elder to be the 5th starter because of what he did last year. He had a 1-hitter, I believe, against the Nationals last year. Him and Kyle Muller were getting called up on a regular basis to do fill-in type roles. You have a number of guys here that I think could impact 2023, and this is who I mean. Max Fried, Kyle Wright, Spencer Strider, Charlie Morton, Dylan Dodd, Jared Schuster, Michael Soroka. All of these guys could perform. Another guy that I'm overlooking here, to be fair, is Colby Allard, who, of course, is out with injury. He could also perform. But that's just opening day. 2023, in its entirety, you have a number of guys. This is a very good problem to have. You have the top 4, obviously. You have Dylan Dodd, Jared Schuster, who are battling it out for that 5th spot. Michael Soroka, who, when healthy, is an ace. Bryce Elder, Ian Anderson, who are both back-of-the-end rotation guys who could fill in at any point and perform well, and Colby Allard as well. So you have a number of guys who could be potential starting pitchers for the Braves throughout 2023. It's not just the guys who are performing right now. You have a long season ahead. Depth is a good thing, and the Braves have actually a lot of it. And that's not something you're hearing across the table right now, but when you really look at the 1-2-3 punch that the Braves have at the top of their rotation with Max Fried, Kyle Wright, and Spencer Strider, that 4 and 5 spot is easier to fill. Now, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to have as much talent on the back end of the rotation or in the minors. You're never going to have that. But the fact that the Braves have 6 options to go to for that 5th starter spot and then 5 if they need to go deeper is a very good thing to have. A lot of people aren't talking about that, and it is actually, again, a very good problem for the Braves to have to choose between Jared Schuster and Dylan Dodd at the start, and then you got the minors full of Michael Soroka, Colby Allard, Ian Anderson, and Bryce Elder. that is not a problem. That is a very good thing. We'll see how it shakes out, but it's a very good thing. So that is the starting rotation right now in week 3 of spring training. Now let's move on to the bullpen. The bullpen, again, is always going to be hit or miss. It's always going to have to be kind of figured out in spring training and even throughout the regular season. This is what we had last week, the bullpen outlook. Of course, the locks are on the left, the locks if healthy on the right. Nothing has really changed in those two. Your bullpen candidates are where things are going to continue to change. You're going to see names fall off, just like we did in the past few days. Seth Elledge, Roderick Munoz, and Darius Vines have all been optioned to AAA. They will not be on opening day roster. They could perform at some point throughout the year, but they're depth pieces, and that again, a good thing to have. I'm looking at the bullpen right now, and I'm looking at the locks, and of course the locks if healthy, and I'm seeing a lot of right-handed pitchers, right? And then I see you have your one solo left-hander in AJ Minter. There's got to be another lefty in the bullpen, in my opinion. I think either Letke or Dylan Lee are going to be in the bullpen, but they're not locks. They are battling it out. They may both make it, but I'll tell you another favorite of mine would be Jackson Stevens, because out of all the guys in the pen, the one thing Jackson Stevens can give you that I'm not sure anybody else in the pen really can at the moment is long relief. Jackson Stevens has pitched multiple innings over the past few years with the Braves. I've seen him pitch 2 innings, 3 innings sometimes. He can do that, and a lot of those guys up there can't. And when you have a guy like that who can cover innings, Jesse Chavez is another one. We'll get to him in just a second. But when you have a guy like that who can cover innings, it's something that is, one, rare, but two, a great perk to have in the backside of your bullpen, to be able to, whether you're winning by 5, losing by 5, a guy that can cover multiple innings and not have to waste arms like Raisel Iglesias and AJ Minter. That's something that's invaluable. So I think Jackson Stevens is a dark horse candidate in making it to the bullpen either opening day or very early on in the season, maybe in the midpoint of the season when somebody's gotten hurt or whatever the case may be. I think he is a legit dark horse candidate, as is Lucas Letke and Dylan Lee. I think they're all very well could be candidates for making it into the bullpen. But right now for opening day, this is the update. It's a shorter list, just like the starting rotation. Your locks are still there. Your locks, if healthy, are still there. I think both Kirby Yates and Nick Anderson will be healthy, but they've, of course, both coming off of injury, and we'll have to see how it goes. But I do think they're locks. The bullpen candidates, you're going to have 2 spots, ideally, from those 4. So you can either go with 2 lefties and Lucas Letke and Dylan Lee, or you could go with 1 lefty, in my opinion, Jackson Stevens, or Michael Tonkin, but in my opinion, Jackson Stevens, and we'll, of course, have to monitor that and see how it goes, but that would be my opinion on where the bullpen is from here. That being said, that's just part of the roster. There's more than that. Of course, the position players. The thing about the position players that the guys that are in the lineup every day, is they're not going to change. So this is the exact graphic I actually showed you on week 1. This is not going to change pending an injury, but Matt Olson is a guarantee. Ozzie Albies is a guarantee. Both Vaughn Grissom and Orlando Arcia are a guarantee, and they're, of course, battling it out for that shortstop position. I think the favorite at this point would be Vaughn Grissom. Third base, obviously, Austin Riley. Catcher, Sean Murphy, Travis d'Arnaud in a combo. Right field, Ronald Acuna. Center field, Michael Harris II. And, of course, in left, Eddie Rosario and Marcell Ozuna. They're either going to platoon or they're going to battle for that left field spot. You do have the DH also, but those would be your main options in left field. So the position players that play every day, the starters, they're not going to change. The guys that are going to change would be your non-roster invitees. Now, this is, again, the graphic that I showed you on week 1, and I'm about to show you how quickly guys fall off, especially in the non-roster invitee. This is how quickly they get shuffled through. They're either released or optioned to wherever they need to be. They may be assigned to a lower level than major leagues, but this is how quickly. I mean, and of course, starting out with Blake Burkhalter. Burkhalter got an injury. He's down with Tommy John. Unfortunate to see that. I don't know that he'd necessarily be out of the picture if that didn't happen. Alan Rangel is gone. Yaxel Rios. Victor Vodnik is gone. In terms of infielders, Cal Conley, Joe Dunand, Adini Hechavarria, former fan favorite, Luke Waddell, Justin Dean, Cody Milligan, Magnaria Sierra, Forrest Wall, and of course Drake Baldwin have all been let go. They're now gone, and it looks a lot different. It looks very different. A lot shorter of a list there. And I wanted to show you this way so you can see how quickly in spring training these guys get shuffled through and picked out. Now, the guys that are going to be given every chance, Jesse Chavez, I would even say A-Ray Adrianza, Kevin Pillar. Kevin Pillar is the lone outfielder from the non-roster invitee list that is still in this. Dylan Dodd, by the way, and Jared Schuster are both non-roster invitees. They both got that invite to spring training. So they're still battling from a non-roster invitee spot. So that's just something to keep in mind. These are guys that perform in spring training looking for that spot. And, of course, Dylan Dodd, Jared Schuster have both taken that and ran with it. Jesse Chavez, I would be surprised if he's not either in AAA or on the Major League roster. I would just be surprised if the Braves do not try to include him. For one, what he does on the field, he covers innings, like I said about Jackson Stevens, but he also is such a mentor for these younger guys. I would just be surprised. The Braves have certainly done their best to give him an opportunity. He's still in the mix for making the roster, but it's going to be interesting. Of course, we got a couple more weeks of spring training, and we'll really watch this shake out and see who's going to make it. We'll follow the news and cover this week to week going forward, but it's been very interesting to follow just the trend of how the Braves have decided to go about their roster spots and things like that. But that being said, that is the spring training roster breakdown as of week 3. And, of course, we'll continue to follow going forward. But, hey, since you're watching, do me a favor. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and, of course, hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay up to date with everything going on here at On Deck and, of course, with your Atlanta Braves. Now, that being said, I want to get into this. We have done 3 interviews in the past couple of days. Of course, well, 4, I guess. There is a Michael Harris interview. It is on the channel. It's a short. It's one I did in the clubhouse over spring training. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you go watch it. That is there right now. If you're not familiar with Cole Phillips, we have interviewed him multiple times on the channel. He was the second-round pick last year for the Braves. And he's a guy who is coming out of injury, and he's about to actually start pitching again. We caught up with him at spring training. We also caught up with a round 1 draft pick, number 20 overall, Owen Murphy, at spring training as well. That interview is coming out tomorrow. And, of course, we also caught up with J.R. Ritchie. J.R. Ritchie was the 35th overall pick. I actually just finished that one before this stream, so we will be releasing that later on this week. So before we get open to questions, I really would like to ask you guys to like the video. It does help the channel out a ton, and it really helps get this out there. We put a lot of work into these streams, and of course we would love your support. If you don't subscribe already, please press the subscribe button. Subscribe to notifications as well so that you are notified every time we go live. We do this once a week through spring training. Try to do it slightly more come the regular season. But for right now, that's the schedule, and we'd love for you to be a part of the community. So thank you for that. And, of course, please share this with your friends. If you're a Braves fan and you have Braves fans that are your friends, please share this with them. Let them know that we are here and that, of course, we are putting these out there. Check out the channel homepage. There's a ton of interviews there. And also, check out the On Deck shop. Right over there, it would be the QR code. Guys, I actually bought something myself from the On Deck shop. So you want to go check it out. They got plenty of merchandise that are within every price range, whether it's t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, everything that you can imagine is on that at that barcode right over there. So thank you for all of your support, whether you're subscribing or buying from the shop. I really do appreciate it. So let's talk about what you guys want to talk about. Let's answer your questions. Remember, super chats do get priority, but I will go through each and every question and answer to the best of my ability. Not sure how long we're going to be here tonight, guys. Just be aware of that. I'm probably going to call it quits right around 8:45, maybe a little later if the stream is going well. Raymond Stone says, go Braves. Thank you. Nicholas, how we doing? He says, Schuster and Dodd are both looking really good. I'm excited to see what both of them can do. Yeah, it was great. Just the timing that we went down for spring training. It was great to see them both in action because that's where the real story is. I would love to see Max Fried pitch in spring training, obviously, but the real story is that 5th spot. It's not so much whether or not Max Fried is having a good day in spring training. We know what he can do. That 5th spot is what I find to be interesting. And to see both Dylan Dodd and Jared Schuster pitch and see how they performed. Of course, it was a weird day for Dylan Dodd. He's taken on a World Baseball Classic team that is absolutely stacked. But that being said, to see both of them perform and to be able to come up here a week later and tell you kind of what I think about it, the timing could not have been better. I'm excited to see what they can do. I've followed Schuster since he got drafted. I've known about him for quite a while, but Dylan Dodd has been a real upstart this season and has caught a lot of attention so far. But no, it was great timing again, and I'm excited to see what they can do, if they can make the roster for opening day, and if they can be that fifth starter. I'd love to see what they can do at the major league level. Let's see, any updates on Wright and Soroka? So Soroka, I'll tell you this, I actually caught up with Soroka while at spring training as well. That interview won't be released for a little while, probably not for another week, but I asked him about his condition. And I'm sure you're looking forward to seeing that. I wish I could show you now, but I have to wait about a week or so. But I did catch up with him, and look, he's got a great mindset about it. He's looking to come back. It's a process, though, and I don't think, at one point I viewed him as the potential favorite for that fifth spot if he was healthy. I don't think the Braves are really there yet. Of course, the hamstring incident happened as well. I would personally love for Soroka to be back and better than ever. But for right now, it's a process, and it's a waiting game. We'll see kind of how it goes. We'll follow it and, do our best to cover it. But for right now, we don't know when he will be back, when he will make his debut. But, Soroka brought up a good point, and that's this. The Braves are holding out hope over something that, that he did a couple of years ago. It's not even necessarily that he's, that going to be that level pitcher again, but because of what he did a few years ago, it's that's what they're holding out hope for. Of course, this is from his rehab stint in Rome, so it's not even necessarily, back when he was, the best he was, but he recorded multiple strikeouts this night. If he can be this guy, if he can be half of this guy, then I would be thoroughly impressed and happy to welcome him back into the starting rotation. But I think the Braves at this point just want him to do one thing, and that's pitch, to be healthy and be able to perform in any way. They just want him to be able to do it and not get injured and get hurt. The most recent Kyle Wright update, I actually was just Googling it. The most recent Kyle Wright update is this. It's from Mark Bowman. It is from the 11th, so forgive me, it may be a bit dated. But he says Kyle Wright said his shoulder felt great as he threw 33 pitches in live BP. He might throw 2 to 3 innings versus minor leaguers next week, so that might be coming up. It may have already happened. Forgive me on that. I should know that. But it's looking like he's developing. Other than that, it's just going to be a waiting game. Spring training, someone always, that kind of thing happens. There's not a lot that gets out. I think we'll just have to wait and see. Nicholas brings up about Soroka, that he thinks Soroka will start in AAA. I do too. I think the reason that I think Ian Anderson and Bryce Elder got optioned to AAA already and Soroka didn't is because at spring training, compared to wherever you might land, at spring training you have the full focus on the players, their recovery, whatever the case may be. In talking with Cole Phillips and Owen Murphy and J.R. Ritchie, I almost mixed up their last names. And speaking with them, they talk a lot about the facilities, about how nice they are compared to just a normal setup, and you have every rehab machine, rehab system there at your disposal. And I think keeping Soroka around that environment is actually a really good thing for him, and I think that's probably why the Braves are doing that. I think he'll be at spring training until the end, but that doesn't necessarily translate to he will be a part of the conversation of starting rotation until the very end. I don't think he will be in the starting rotation opening day. As much as I would love for him to make it, I don't think that's where the Braves' best interest is. I think they want to put him in Gwinnett and let him grow into being healthy again and make sure that he's good to go. I mean, with all the battles that Michael Soroka has had, that is the biggest one, is staying healthy. So we'll of course see, but for right now, that's all we can really say. Drew Phillips says, should we be encouraged by Eddie in the World Baseball Classic? I watched the World Baseball Classic a good bit. Of course, there's a game going on right now. I wish I could watch it, but I had to do this. I will say this. Eddie Rosario hit a homer in the one game that I got to see him in. I think I said before the World Baseball Classic started that I hope whoever he works with the Venezuelan team can maybe unlock something. And I think that, yes, there is some encouragement. I think the fact that, he's been able to, he's been able to do anything in that is encouraging. His eyes must be better. I think there is some encouragement there. I think that look, one home run doesn't mean anything. I can't pull up his stats directly from the World Baseball Classic. Even if it was all of his stats, that would be a small sample size. We're going to have to wait and see. I wish, in a way, that he was in spring training so I could actually see what was going on. But I also think being around the World Baseball Classic, being around that energy in service of his country, whatever way you want to look at it, I think that it would actually benefit him in that light. So, we'll see. But, that's all we can really say right now. And I know I said that he was with a Venezuelan team. I apologize, Puerto Rican team. But no, I really think that if he can get something from it, then I would love to see that. Again, it's a small sample size, so take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, I would say definitely some excitement from him hitting a homer in there. Yeah. Yasuki Knight says, can't wait to see what these guys can do in the new season. Drew Phillips says, should we be concerned about Acuna? Looks more like guy from last year than pre-injury. Still good, but not great. I will say this. He's good. Playing in the World Baseball Classic's a little bit different than playing every day. I don't think you should worry about it. I think he can only be better, and you may see him get better throughout the season with as he gets more comfortable with of course, the ACL injury. So I think as you see him throughout the year, he could get better. Now, granted, I still think that he was probably better pre-injury, but it's going to take time for that to go away. It's going to take time for him to be who he's meant to be, and I think we'll have to wait and see where that goes. Oren Griswold says, hey, Tyler, what's your thoughts on the shortstop battle? Shoemake is making things very interesting. I actually had this conversation with a few people at spring training, namely media folks, that were having this discussion, the Dansby exit and how everything worked out. And I actually asked a couple of them, hey, do you guys think that if Braden Shoemake had not gotten hurt 2 days before Ozzie Albies got hurt, do you think Braden Shoemake would have got that call? Because he was technically in line before Vaughn Grissom. And they said yes. They said Braden Shoemake would have certainly gotten the call. It would not have been doubtful. So as good as Vaughn Grissom is, Braden Shoemake could very well be better in the role. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but it is, like you said, very interesting, and he is making it very interesting. And look, I don't want to overshadow Vaughn here. Vaughn has had a lot of work put in for that spot. He has been he was a phenomenal fill-in, all things considered, for Ozzie Albies last year. He has been great so far in spring training. We can only see what he does. I think it's his spot to lose at this point, but I wouldn't say that it's necessarily his. And you brought up Braden Shoemake. We're talking about Vaughn Grissom. There's one other guy that we have to talk about in that mix, and that's Orlando Arcia. Orlando Arcia has been very overlooked in this because we know what we get from Orlando Arcia. We know the stats, we know the performance, we know the glove, but Orlando Arcia is a good talent. He is not a guy that is just a stopgap. He is a guy that could very well be anyone's starting shortstop. He was the Brewers' starting shortstop before being traded. So he very well could be an option. I'm not saying he is the option, but I'm saying between him, Vaughn Grissom, and Shoemake, the Braves have options. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to say that. I've been wanting to say it for a while. Don't overlook Orlando Arcia. He very well could be a factor in 2023. Drew Phillips says he does not like Olsen batting second. It should be Harris and Olsen cleanup. In spring training, I think they're going to probably go with a few different things. I personally, I've gone through this. I personally would like, also remember Acuna's not there, if that's where we're going with that. But I personally would rather, if I'm building a team on MLB The Show and I'm just going with it, I would probably put Harris batting first, Ozzy Albies batting second, Riley batting third, Olsen batting behind him, and then Acuna fifth because he's a power bat. But that's not how the Braves operate. The Braves operate very differently. Acuna thrives in that leadoff spot. That's where he wants to be. That's where he feels like he's the best. If that's the case, I may put Harris second with Riley batting directly behind him, and then Olsen switching the righty-lefty matchups up. That may be where I go with that, have Ozzy down in the lineup a little more. But there's a lot of different options that the Braves can go with. It's not necessarily the one and only option there. So we'll, of course, continue to follow that. You know, the lineup thing is a conversation that is continually had. Everybody has an opinion on how the lineup would be better if they did X, Y, and Z. But personally, I think no matter what the lineup is, as long as you got what the Braves have in it, there's not really a problem there. The Braves have talent up and down the lineup no matter how you look at it. It's all, I think, determined by who you're playing. You know, if you can do better with guys that have wheels at the beginning of the lineup against a particular team, then that's what the Braves will put out there. If you tend to hit bombs on it against a team, you may play it differently. So we'll see how it goes. Nicholas says, I mean, look who's Venezuela had to go up against, some insane talent. Yeah, I will tell you this. The ability to go out and film the Dominican team, right? I think at this point we can realize that Venezuela and the Dominican team are kind of, at this point, two of the top two teams. I'm not going to say they're the best, but they're two of the top two teams. And I knew that before they started the World Baseball Classic. And last week, being able to see the Dominican team in person, I'm going to pull up this roster for you because I just want you to realize how much talent is on that team. I saw the roster before anybody did this particular day. Keep in mind, this is without Juan Soto. Your lineup: Julio Rodriguez, Rafael Devers, Manny Machado, Teoscar Hernandez, would-be Hall of Famer Robinson Cano, Gary Sanchez, Eloy Jimenez, Willie Adames, and Jeremy Pena. On the bench, Gene Segura, Ketel Marte, Wander Franco, Francisco Mejia, and Nelson Cruz. It's kind of ridiculous. So what that gave me the ability to do, among other things, is I could film these guys hitting in the cage. So all in one spot, I got to film all of these guys. So I have B-roll. Sorry, you're not media people, but I have video of these guys to use whenever I need it. So I want you to realize this team is stacked. But Venezuela is too. You look at Venezuela up and down. It's Jose Altuve, Ronald Acuna. I mean, every team is doing their best in their country. U.S. has a pretty good team as well, but no, those two teams are absolutely stacked, I would say. Let's see. Nicholas says, what were your initial thoughts on Drake Baldwin? Drake Baldwin, of course, is a catcher for the Braves. I didn't dislike him necessarily, but I honestly didn't see enough of him to really make a decision. I'm trying to get to that. Baldwin was cut this week. He's in the catcher. I think the Braves catchers are pretty much figured out. Like, I don't think any of those four catchers there are going to be on the opening day roster because you have Sean Murphy, who's obviously going to play. You have Travis d'Arnaud. In the third spot, you have Chadwick Tromp, who's playing fairly well, I believe, in the World Baseball Classic right now. So I think there's enough there to where I'm not really worried about the catchers. The guy that I think hasn't been talked about enough would probably be Kevin Pillar. In terms of outfielders, because you look at our outfield right now, obviously two spots are taken care of, right field and center with Acuna and Harris. Left field's the biggest question. Of course, we'll see what Eddie Rosario is able to do this year. Is he going to be Eddie Rosario of old, or is he going to be Eddie Rosario of last year? We'll have to wait and see on that. Marcell Ozuna, is he the DH? Is he on the bench? We can only wait and see. But I think the left field situation is still one that is up for grabs. And I think Kevin Pillar very well may make a run for left field. The question that I have for Double-A going forward is Marcell Ozuna going to be on the roster? Because Double-A at the beginning of spring training basically hinted towards the fact that if Marcell Ozuna doesn't have a great spring training, then he may not be on the roster. He may be traded. He may be elsewhere. He may be let go completely. But if that's the case, I would be very curious as to what the Braves are going to do with Marcell Ozuna, because if they get rid of him, then great. But, I mean, I hate to say great, but he hasn't exactly been prolific with the Braves. So if that's the case, then, okay, I can accept it. But it's also, you're losing money. So we'll have to wait and see on Ozuna. In case you're wondering, in spring training this year, he's played in 9 games. That's 30 at-bats, 30 plate appearances as well. He's had 4 RBIs, 4 doubles, 9 hits. It's good for a .321 batting average. So it's not like he's having a bad spring training. 367 on base and a .464 slug. So no, he's not having a bad spring training at all. But he's also projected to hit .242 in 2023, and he's also projected to strike out 110 times. So is it great? No. Is it worth losing Ozuna and losing the money with him? I also don't think that's the case. So, of course, we'll have to wait and see, but there's a lot to really see what the Braves do and how it shakes out. But again, we'll have to see. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't know. A lot of people want my thoughts on Ozuna on a regular basis. It's really, you got to follow it day to day, because if the Braves make that decision, it's not going to get leaked prior to making that decision. If they ever do make the decision to let go of Ozuna, we'll, of course, have you covered right here on deck. But I don't think spring training is necessarily enough to make that happen. Because, look, if Ozuna had hit, 120 and didn't have any RBIs and wasn't really performing, and, if there just wasn't the talent shown, that, yeah, you have a legit reason. Anthopoulos has a legit reason to make that decision to throw away X millions of dollars and lose Ozuna completely and let him walk to another team, in terms of talking, because it's not just AA, it's AA and Liberty Media. He has to explain that decision. So, if Ozuna leaves the Braves and all of a sudden just plays super well at another team, and we just threw away $16-30 million, whatever the case may be, it's not going to look too good for AA. So there's the hesitancy. A lot of people just want to get rid of Ozuna for principle alone. I don't necessarily disagree with you there, but it's not necessarily how it works. But that's kind of my spiel on Ozuna, but we'll see. Snit said Ozuna would be on the roster. Mark Narmore says, hey, Tyler, 15 days. Not too long. I can't wait. Drew Phillips says, do you think AA makes a minor trade or signing before opening day? Well, a lot of people have pointed to the starting rotation for reason to believe so, right? A lot of people have looked at our starting rotation and said, well, look, we have a 5th spot open, and who do we have to take it? But they're underestimating what the Braves have, right? A lot of people have thought maybe the Braves make a signing or a trade for a starting pitcher. I don't think so. Not with this level of depth. And, of course, going into the year, not with this level of depth. I think there's too much there. I would be surprised if they did it for any kind of starter. What would be interesting is if they just decided to all of a sudden sign a left fielder. That would be very interesting, or trade for a left fielder. I don't think we necessarily have the prospect capital to make that happen in terms of a trade, and I don't really know the free agents that are out there super well, but that would be pretty interesting, because that would let you know kind of how they felt about their current left field situation. But I also don't think they would do that, because you have too many pieces there already. Eddie Rosario, Marcell Ozuna, and of course Kevin Pillar. So you have a lot of guys there already. I don't think they're necessarily going to do that. The bullpen, I think they're pretty much covered there too. I don't really see a spot where the Braves really need to make a trade. They can always improve, don't get me wrong, but it's hard to just predict a trade like that to happen, right? Like, there's a lot of trades that happen that nobody would have predicted. I don't think the Sean Murphy trade was a predictable trade. I think that kind of came out of the blue, because why on earth would the Braves want to lose a William Contreras, right? But it happened. So it's hard to know. Again, they can always try to improve, and maybe trading these 2 prospects and getting 2 of their prospects or 1 of their prospects is an improvement. We don't know. But at the end of the day, it could happen. I just don't see a spot where it's directly going to affect the team, if that makes sense. Thanks for the question. I really do appreciate it. Guys, remember, Super Chats do get priority. They also help out the channel. We really do appreciate it. Also, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and, of course, hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay up to date with everything going on here at On Deck. And, of course, with the Atlanta Braves. And don't forget to check out the shop. You can find it right there with the QR code. I really would appreciate you checking that out. Let's see. Drew Phillips says, if Ozuna gets released, the Braves would have to pay his whole contract right away, and luxury tax costs would go up. That's the other caveat. So there's a lot working against the idea that Ozuna is just going to be thrown out the door. Doesn't work that way, and it just doesn't. They could put him in the minors, but if he's hitting, then there's no sense in that. They could not start him, which happened quite a lot last year. So there's other ways to go about it, and he has virtually no trade value, so you're better off just keeping him. Matthew Brittingham says, Tyler, Rosario looks like garbage, and Ozuna is finally hitting. Am I the only one who thinks d'Arnaud needs to be the DH and Ozuna needs to play left? Ozuna is bad at throwing, but we need the best offense. I don't think so. I don't view it that way. Rosario is not what he once was. I mean, I think we all would prefer the Rosario of 2021 and postseason where he was just hitting on all cylinders. But that's a peak. It doesn't always hang around like that. I don't think he's necessarily garbage. I think Rosario is, guys, it's not even spring training. These guys are playing full games that are postseason level. He hit a homer, which is better than what the rest of his team did the other day. I mean, it's tough for me to really say that this guy has no potential. I think he has way better defense than Ozuna by far. Do we need the best offense? Sure. But if it's me, I put d'Arnaud at DH or Murphy at DH, whoever's not catching. And from there, I put Marcell Ozuna on the bench and d'Arnaud, or Rosario rather, in left field. Or even Pilar. I don't think that I would rather have Ozuna in the outfield. I mean, we've seen him in the outfield. It's not good. I mean, you give up 2 runs that lose a game because Ozuna's in left field, and I just don't view it that way. I can understand why you're there, but I don't view it that way. I don't think Ozuna belongs in the outfield at this point in his career. Like Nicholas says, Pilar in left, he's much better fielder. We'll see. DH is also one of those spots that by the day, I think Ozuna is going to have his fair share of days at DH. I think Rosario might be a DH one day. If somebody needs a day off from the field, Acuna could be a DH one day. That's something that's interchangeable. But I don't think Ozuna belongs in the outfield. Not on a regular basis. Especially not with the shift now banned. I don't think he's the right guy. I just would have to stand up against that one. Drew Phillips says, you lose principal argument on Ozuna when you keep him this long. It is a principle to release a guy because he stinks. I think if another incident were to occur off the field, that might give the Braves enough reason to say, okay, we're going to let this guy walk. The first one was obviously bad. The second one was bad, but it wasn't, worse than the first. So by principle, it didn't make sense to, like you said, it didn't make sense to let him go the second time for a DUI when the first time he got in trouble for domestic abuse. So it's a whole thing. I hate that the Braves are in that situation, but, it is what it is. Matt says, hey, Tyler, do you think it would make the team better to just cut Kirby Yates? That looks like a bad contract to me. She ain't what she used to be, if you know what I mean. No, I would disagree on that as well. Kirby Yates is not what he used to be, sure, but he was never meant to be a guy that the Braves counted on in 2022 or even when they signed the contract in 2021. He was the guy that they were going to count on this year. So to throw away the millions that you've paid him just to lock him up for 2023 now, I think would be a mistake. I think now you have to take your chances on the guy. Is he going to be your closer? No, that's Raisel Iglesias. Is he going to be a prolific part of the bullpen? Yet to be seen. But I think also with what you have in the pen right now, you're kind of limited. Yeah, we have some guys competing, but you're down Tyler Matzik due to injury, already. And you don't have Kenley Jansen anymore, which I know a lot of people are happy about, but either way, it's a commodity you don't have anymore. You're down Tyler Madzik, you're down Kenley Jansen. A lot of your older guys aren't there. Kirby Yates brings something that, frankly, AJ Minter can't bring, and that's experience. And you know, I think that it's actually a good thing for him to be around. Now, again, is he what he used to be? Probably not. But is he better than some of the other options we have right now? I would say yes. Do I think we should just cut him? No, I don't think that at all. But I can understand why you're saying that, but I don't believe so. Drew Phillips says the player who will be in left field by midseason isn't on the team. That's interesting. I'd like to know who you'd have in mind. I definitely think the trade deadline is going to be interesting this year. I would say that. I know that's kind of where you're going with that. That I would definitely say that I think the trade deadline in 2023 for the Braves is going to be interesting. It's not going to be 2021, but I definitely think it's going to be interesting. Yeah, we took an L on Ozuma's contract. Drew Phillips, is McHugh hurt? He hasn't pitched yet. You know, that's actually a good question. I haven't checked on his condition lately. I'm actually going to look it up while I'm talking. Colin McHugh, you're right. I haven't seen him pitch yet, and I haven't thought about it. Let me see. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, Colin McHugh is hurt, but he is training. He's not hurt like for the year. He's just hurt temporarily. So he will be back at some point. But I can't find anything that tells me definitively what he's doing. He is working behind the scenes on the backfields at Cool Today Park. That's what we know. So he could be back sooner than later. I don't really know anything else on his condition. The Braves aren't really putting that out there right now. Matthew, Tyler, did you know Cubs fans are freaking out because Dansby has been so bad? He's always been one of the worst contact hitters in baseball. Now it's becoming apparent as he's hitting .059. I did not know that. Thank you for telling me that. You know, he just wants to win, so we'll see how it goes. Do you think the Braves will trade Fried? No. I keep seeing that places, and I wish they'd stop saying it. I don't think they're going to trade Fried, and I understand the concept of it, but a lot of people are overlooking some context because let's say we were the Detroit Tigers, okay? Everybody on the Detroit Tigers and Max Fried. Then I think the Braves could trade Fried. But being that the Braves are going to be successful for the next few years, and of course Fried will be around until 2025, being that the Braves are going to be successful up until that point, at least on paper, I don't think that Max Fried is going to be traded. I would be thoroughly surprised. I don't think that's going to happen because if you trade him and then you have a shot at the World Series, what are you doing, right? I mean, it's just, I mean, do you really think the Braves aren't going to make the playoffs for the next 2 years? That's kind of how I view that. And if you can get a return, great, but what kind of return are you going to get that's going to impact the team right now? The Braves window is right now. The Braves window is for the next 5-6 years. That's what maybe longer, but I don't think you are successful in that window by trading Fried. I would be just surprised by that. Joe Reese, do you think Mike Soroka will get at least one start in spring training? A start, maybe not. A appearance, sure. Yeah, I think so. I wouldn't necessarily say it was definitely going to be a start, but I think he could very well have an appearance. Drew Phillips says, I think Ian could get traded. That is one that I think could happen because he is a depth piece. He has some history. The real appeal there, or the real thing about that, is you have to convince another team that he still has that value that he had back in 2021 when he was still a rookie. And I think Ian has unfortunately been called up too early and never really got the full treatment in the minor leagues to develop and hone his skills. Not to say that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's also not, ideal for a guy who wants to have a long career all the time. And it really depends on the player, but it's not necessarily for Ian Anderson. 2022, he had a 5 ERA. That's not, what he was marketed to be. So far in spring training, he has a 6.14 ERA and 7 innings pitched. Small sample size. Like a lot of people, I just saw a comment down there asking why have they been so bad in spring training, Elder and Anderson. A lot of people will go to spring training stats and they'll treat them like gold, right? Like, hey, look, he's got a 4 ERA, no strikeouts, 6 walks. What are we doing? But if he's thrown 7 innings, the ERA to me is irrelevant. I don't care about that. It's relevant to some degree, but it's relevant under context. This is his first appearances since the offseason. It's not lights out. There are guys that are doing better, but it doesn't necessarily tell you that, hey, later on, these guys could very well benefit your organization. So that's kind of what I look at. And again, I don't look at these guys as guys that are going to get traded. If I did, I would tell you. But when I look at this graphic, I legitimately see 6 guys at the bottom of your screen that could impact the starting rotation. Again, guys, depth is a good thing. You might not look at Bryce Elder and Ian Anderson as great depth pieces, but I do. I think they are very good depth pieces. I think they could very well make an impact by the middle of the year. If not, maybe they're traded. But I really do think that they are going to make an impact. Colby Allard is another one. I think Michael Soroka could very well make one again. Dylan Dodd and Jared Schuster just happen to be pitching well right now. That is not always going to happen necessarily. It is not a guarantee. They could be a Spencer Strider type, go to the rotation and never get out. But again, that is a rare thing to happen. So I don't think that any of these guys are necessarily on the trade block. Now, if Colby Allard doesn't improve from what he did last year to this year, he might not get another deal with the Braves. But I definitely think these guys are going to be given every chance they can. And look, the Braves operate differently. A lot of people look at what other teams do and kind of judge it by that. But you know this coaching staff. This coaching staff is old school. They go by the way, frankly, of Bobby Cox. They give guys every chance they can. They give guys every benefit of the doubt. And guys, that's not a bad thing. Look what it did for Kyle Wright. Okay, look what it's done for Mike Soroka. Michael Soroka on a lot of other teams would have been given up on by now. The Braves continue to give him every chance. That is a good thing. And a lot of people really like to overlook that, but I don't believe that, that's not the best way to do it. I think that is the best way to do it. They've been proven to be successful under that type of management and under that type of coaching. I think they'll continue to do it. So, we'll see what happens, but I don't believe that they're going to trade any of those guys. Let's see. Do I think there's any chance of the Braves getting into the Ohtani bidding? No. Number one, the Braves are not going to pay him what he wants. Number two, the Braves have never been a team to go after a guy with a different type of, setup like Ohtani has currently. I mean, they're not going to go after a guy that hits and pitches. It's just not going to happen. I don't think that's in their mold. I don't think it'll ever be in their mold. It's not the quote-unquote Braves way. I just don't think so. I would be surprised. Now, again, I would love it if they did, but I don't think so. Drew Phillips, Elder just doesn't have great stuff. Anderson has no control. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I think they're both things that can be solved. I think they're both things that can be fixed. Elder is also very young. Very, very, very young, and I think he has yet to develop his skills at the professional level. Keep in mind, this is another thing. Last year, Elder specifically, every time he got called up, it was for a fill-in role. Even if he did good, he was not rewarded. I'm not saying it's a reward, system. I'm just saying he came up and gave a one-hitter to the Nationals and then will sit back down, right? So it's not. He hasn't had the chance at the major league level to really learn. And Anderson was called up so early, he probably wasn't ready. When they called up on Ian Anderson in 2020, he was not ready to be everything he can be. I'll stand by that. And I don't think he ever really got the chance to develop, more so just trying to stay afloat. And I think now we're kind of at the point where the league has figured him out and he hasn't figured out the league. So, and that goes for both of them a little bit. But again, time will tell. That's all we can really say on that. Mark Narmore says, Fried is in his prime and left-handed. Get the deal done. I think the Braves would love to get the deal done with Fried. I wouldn't be surprised if they've already offered that. We did a whole video pre-recorded video on Fried. It's on the channel right now, whether or not the Braves could get him done. He's honestly my biggest concern right now after seeing Freddie leave, after seeing Dansby leave. Max Fried is the number one concern. I mean, if you lose him, I mean, you're losing quite a lot there. So, and again, like you said, he's in his prime. He's not aging. He's ahead of the curve. You got to get him. But, you know, we'll see. We will see. Let's see. Nicholas says, I feel like he needs to go somewhere, and if he's not going to get opportunities in Atlanta. He's talking about Waskari Noah. Waskari Noah has been quite the journeyman. Within the Braves organization, he comes up. He's a hot-handed reliever who can't locate. He's sent back down. He comes back. He's in the starting rotation. Arguably our best starter at the top of 2020, is hitting homers while being the best starter on the Braves roster at the time, at least the most consistent. Has one bad start, breaks his hand, never really comes back and is the same, and now he's just kind of dwelling in the minor leagues. Yeah, I mean, maybe he needs to go somewhere else. Maybe that's the best for him, but is it the best for the Braves? Will they do it? You know, who knows? But he also hasn't done anything within the organization to prove that he can be what he once was. I would love it if he did. Drew Phillips, Elder is great against Nats and Marlins. Yeah, so is Kyle Muller. Both of them were. Matthew Brittingham, hey Tyler, I keep seeing Wright penciled in as one of the top 4 starters, but isn't he injured? When is he supposed to be back? I think Kyle Wright, the reason Kyle Wright is penciled in on this graphic is because without a doubt, when he's healthy, he is our best option, or one of our best options at starting pitching. He is a lock to make it into the 2023 season. Is he a lock for opening day? That is yet to be seen, but I am not taking him off that list until I know for sure. If that does not happen, if Kyle Wright is not there for opening day, I think you may see Dylan Dodd and Jared Schuster and maybe an extended bullpen, because early on in the season, you can carry around extra pitchers. They very well may carry around Michael Soroka, Jackson Stevens for that long relief if Kyle Wright is not healthy. But the latest update on Kyle Wright is basically that his shoulder felt great. I think he'll be ready to go. Honestly, I think he'll be ready to go for opening day. And it's not opening day necessarily. It's 3 days after, it could be 4 days after the opening day. It's not necessarily in this order. This is just the order that I put it in. They could do any order they wanted in theory. But no, I think he'll be ready for opening day based on what we know with his health update. And that is, again, that he felt great. Guys, we got just a few minutes left. I am probably going to wrap it up here in just a second. If you have a question, super chat it. It's the best way to get it in time. But that being said, again, please like the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay updated with everything going on here at On Deck and, of course, with your Atlanta Braves. Again, check out the On Deck shop. Follow me on social media over there. All that good stuff. I really appreciate your support. And, of course, we're going to do this every week in spring training. And, of course, as we move into the regular season and eventually, hopefully, the postseason. So, that being said, we're going to answer a couple more questions, and then I'm going to wrap this up. So, yeah, Waskari Noah's out for the season. Tommy John surgery. Jake Hobby says he wonders who the 5th starter will be. That's what spring training's for. And, of course, the early part of the season. We'll see. Drew Phillips, Joe Jimenez has been awful and wasn't good. A terrible deal. I didn't particularly love that deal when it happened, just because Joe Jimenez didn't exactly have stats that stood off the page. In 2022, he had a 3.49 ERA. Not terrible. I mean, it's not super great. In spring training, he's been bad, but again, small sample size. Yeah, it's an 11 ERA, but it's also 1 2/3 innings pitched. It's not necessarily indicative of what he's going to be come the regular season. Well into the regular season. The good news is there's guys you can count on. You can count on AJ Minter. You can count on Raisel Iglesias. There's going to be some growing pains, but I still think that there is time to find out who's going to be the guys to go to in the pen. But we'll see. Is it a terrible deal? I don't think you can say that yet. I don't think it's necessarily done. Christopher Pope says Spencer is the best. Look, I will not negate that. I would say he's probably Is he the best starter in on the team right now? He's got a legit argument for that. I'm not saying I'd pick him over Fried, but he's got a legit argument. Drew Phillips, hot take. Nick Anderson will be our righty setup man by midseason. The thing about it is this, it could happen. I think he's going to be a lock if healthy, but you also have, Colin McHugh, who will be back eventually. You have Raisel Iglesias, who I think will be your closer without a doubt. Kirby Yates is in the mix there too. Joe Jimenez. I don't think that's a bad take. I really don't. But we'll see. Matthew Brittingham. Hey, Tyler, does Soroka have minor league options left? Someone told me he did. I disagree because he's on a major league contract, right? We can't just stash him in the minors, right? They could very well put him in the minors at the beginning of the season. He could start the season on the disabled list technically. But I'm not really sure, to tell you the truth. I'm not sure how many options he has. He is on the 40-man roster, though. So I think before they would put him in the minors, they'd probably put him on the DL. I'm sorry, the IL. But we'll see on that. Again, I don't know for sure. I'm not really keeping track of the options on him. But I definitely think he's in the mix for some kind of either DL at the beginning or, I think it's either DL or roster. And if he's not, he won't be on the 26-man necessarily, but he can't leave the 40-man, and he will be on the 40-man. That being said, that is going to wrap up everything we have here tonight. I really appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. Thank you again, as always, for your support. Again, please like the video, subscribe to the channel so that you're geared up for opening day. And, of course, all throughout spring training, we're going to be doing these podcasts right here on YouTube. Of course, set your notifications on so that you know when we go live. Tell your friends about it. Of course, check out the shop. Follow me on social media if you want to. All that good stuff. But as always, thanks so much, and we'll see you next time right here at On Deck.
Baseball fans, make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. As always, thank you for your support.